Welcome to the second episode of The Greek Question. We're here again discussing another very interesting subject. This time we're going to be talking about Brexit. So it's me, your first host, Jason, and I'm here with your second host, Alexander. Yeah. Yes. How is everyone? Another lovely Saturday with a lot of news about Brexit as well, so that's going to be very interesting. So as always, you can find us on Facebook, you can find us on our website, thegreekquestion.com. Now it's going to be redirecting you to Facebook because, well, the website is not ready yet, but yeah, we'll get there at some point. Okay, so we started the stream with a very traditional British song.
Yeah, from the days where the British Empire wasn't useless as shit. It was really good, those days where people used to colonize the world, kill the natives without feeling any remorse.
Well, yeah, it's the British Grenadiers.
Yes.
Okay, so let's start with what's Brexit, because this is what's going to be our very first topic of discussion today. Mm-hmm. And I think we should start with like the absolute basics, like what's Brexit, what caused it, and that kind of stuff.
I'm going to go ahead and say Brexit is just a massive aneurysm the country had, at least half the country had.
Well, it's the situation where the United Kingdom wants to leave the European Union as a result from a referendum. But I actually think that there is someone who can explain it better. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to show you a video from the Irish channel, the RTE Kids or something like that. It's a channel targeted towards kids, and they try to explain what's Brexit. Let's hear them out.
News about Brexit recently, and you've probably heard a lot of words like backstop and checkers. But what does it all mean? Well, here's one of RTE's political experts, Paul Cunningham, to explain.
The word Brexit means that Britain is exiting or leaving the European Union. The British people voted in favour of leaving the EU in June 2016. But the date Britain will actually leave the EU is March 2019. Both the British and the EU are now trying to agree on what relationship they will have after Brexit. The EU has a single market. This means stuff made in Ireland can travel around the EU without any checks or regulations. Britain still wants to be part of that after Brexit. If Britain chose a deal like Norway, it would be outside the EU but still able to use the single market. But it would mean that people as well as goods could travel freely across borders, and Britain doesn't like that. If Britain chose a deal like Switzerland, it could still use the single market, but it would have to obey the same trade rules as the EU, and Britain does like that. Britain wouldn't have the problem with rules, courts and people if it had a trade deal like Canada, but it would only have limited use of the single market, and Britain wants more than that. The British Prime Minister Theresa May has another idea. Her plan is known as checkers. She wants a better deal than Canada, but without as many rules. However, last week in Salzburg in Austria, the EU told her this checkers plan will not work. The Irish government is worried about what's going to happen between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. They want a backstop. That's an unbreakable agreement that there will never be a physical border in Ireland, whether there's a deal or not. When you cross the border today, no one stops you to ask for your passport or to look in your car or any trucks. Both the Irish and British governments say they want this to remain even after Brexit next year. However, if Britain wants a deal like Canada, then the EU will want to know what stuff is crossing the border. Both sides are trying to work out how to do that without having to have checks at the border. Both sides agree there should be a backstop, but they can't agree how it will work. If they get that sorted, they'll have longer to work out a trade deal. But they only have a few weeks to sort out the backstop. The clock is ticking.
So, as you can see, it's not a simple situation. So now, after hearing all those very interesting and complicated words, let's go ahead and see about the timeline, like what caused the whole situation. So as you can see here, this whole situation officially started on May the 7th on 2015. So that's not when the whole situation started, but that's when there was the last general election before the whole Brexit situation happened. And what they had promised back then was to have a referendum whether the UK should remain or leave the European Union. So, Alexander, do you know what led to this promise?
Well, in short, what actually led to this promise was a nationalistic uprising in the UK that wanted all foreigners gone, that exists in the country since, well, its existence, which just found some decent footing nowadays. And Gordon, who was it? It wasn't Gordon Brown.
No, it was Farage.
Yeah,
and his Eurosceptic party called UKIP. So they are a far right party, and there was a lot of Euroscepticism because there was an economic crisis all across Europe after the economic crisis hit the US, and it spread into Europe. And then what all those nationalists and socialists, in a way, parties tend to do is to blame everyone else except themselves. So that caused a lot of questions whether is the EU something good for the UK, or is it something that's causing them problems? And as a result, this party started getting more and more followers. So Gordon Brown actually saw that.
Was Gordon Brown?
No, it wasn't Gordon Brown. It was.
It wasn't Tony Blair because he was semi-competent.
No. It was Cameron, David Cameron. So David Cameron saw this increase in followers, and he was afraid because Cameron was the leader of the Conservative Party, and as the Conservative Party, they are the traditional right-wing party here in the UK.
Nothing wrong with that. Let's just get out there.
That's just where they stand, and so they wouldn't lose votes to someone from the left, seeing an increase, but they were potentially going to be losing votes from someone in the far right, like Farage and UKIP, and that resulted in Cameron promising, you know what? If you vote me, and if you help us remain in government opposed to Labour, the left-wing party here in the UK, I'm going to give you a referendum. So he tried to appease basically all those far-right voices out there and try to get them to support him in the next elections with the promise of a referendum. So those elections were held on the 7th of May 2015, and of course the Conservatives won, so Cameron was the Prime Minister. And as a result, he actually made actions of his promises. So that kudos to him for that one. So he promised it and he did it.
Yeah, only to just fucking leave the party the moment the decision was made.
No, let's wait. Let's get there. So the referendum was announced, as you can see in the lovely infographic we have over there, and it took place on the 23rd of June 2016. So the people went out, they voted. So it's quite interesting to see talk a little bit about the events of that night, because all the polls out there, they were talking about a clear win for Remain. So there were two sides, Remain and Brexit, like the Leave party, the Leave side. the main things that the Leave side was using to try and convince people to vote for Leave is the fact that we have to, the UK has to pay a lot of money towards the European Union. They will be losing like billions or hundreds of millions per week. Like the biggest one was the famous
350 for the NHS.
Yeah. Actually, let me find that. Let me show you the exact. So let's see.
Also, to pick up on an interesting point while you're searching, around the time it was when it seems media also had a massive aneurysm.
So here it is. That's the famous bus that apparently they were claiming that they're sending 350 million pounds per week to the EU just for some reason, and that they could use this money for the NHS instead. So this was one of the main things they had, and to convince people to vote for Leave. Interestingly enough, the very next day after Leave won, Farage had an interview because Farage was like the number one guy, and he said, well, this was never accurate because, yeah, they are going to be giving 350 million over to the EU, but it just was an idea to fund the NHS with this money. It's not legally binding. It doesn't mean that because he said it and supported it, didn't mean that they're going to do it. So it's a very interesting subject, if you ask me. So as I was saying, 23rd of June, the referendum happens, Remain loses, and then that's where the shitstorm started, really.
Yeah, let's not forget, Britain lost enough money to cover for the Greek debt in one night just because of this vote.
Yeah, because the moment the final result came out that the UK voted to leave, then the pound just dropped.
Plummeted, yeah.
Yeah. It was like suicide plummet.
So this actually brings up a pretty important subject. We're both European countries, and they could afford to lose enough money to cover the debt of another country in the European Union, which is supposed to be like our sister country. And yet, they chose to fuck everyone over overnight rather than actually support one of the countries that could have used it and, I don't know, maybe brought some development to the whole union. Just throwing ideas out there instead of just having this stupid nationalistic view that all the countries are disconnected from each other completely.
Well, let's look a little bit. Let's look at the actual voting data. So the referendum happens, and this is how the people voted. So the final result was 51.9% to leave versus 48.1%, with a turnout of 72%. So some people might already argue that A, we don't have more than 80% of the country voting, but 70% is still pretty high, and the difference between the winning and the losing side is not big enough to justify a clear win, because it's only like 2% difference.
But that doesn't matter in a democracy. It's still the vote of the most popular side.
But that's the thing. The referendum has... In the UK, all referendums only have advisory nature. What that means is that it's not legally binding, just because Leave won, it didn't necessarily mean now it has to happen.
Of course, but if you don't do it, then you shit on democracy, and the next step is a civil war.
It's not about shitting in democracy, it's the fact that not everyone voted.
Sure, it doesn't matter. Vote is a responsibility, not a benefit.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But then at the same time, the difference is not that big to justify the situation that we are currently in.
Under absolute democracy, that doesn't matter either. So Brexit has to happen because the people voted for it and it was given to the people.
So in order to be government, right, in the general elections, in order to be government, you need to have the absolute... You need to have more people than the opposition, right? So not just like by one, but you need to have the absolute majority. Otherwise, you can't become government, right?
Okay.
So if the same rules were to apply to the referendum, this result wouldn't result to a government, and it wouldn't result in a result.
Well, no, but this is a democratic procedure generated by the government, voted by the majority of the people that already has the absolute majority and power of the country. And they asked the people, and most of them did say we need to leave. So the government has to honor this decision, regardless of what's better. They have to actually go through the route. The moment it was given to the people, well, you have to follow it. Otherwise, you have an uprising in your hands.
Well, an uprising of the 51%. What about the other 49%?
It doesn't matter. But either way, both sides will rise up. It's a lose-lose situation.
That's why you don't do referendums.
Yes.
But the thing is, if the government was smart enough, they could already, based on this result, they could say it's an advisory nature. So we're gonna do. You voted us in, right? So you voted us as government,
Yeah.
and because you voted us thinking that we know better what to do for the country, because that's why you vote for governments. We're going to take the result into consideration.
Yep.
Then we're going to weigh our options and see and calculate what's best for the country.
Well, the main problem there is in the 51.9%, the nationalistic chav that voted for it only knows how much a pint of carling is and not what the impact it is on the country.
Exactly, which is the second reason why the referendum should be only advisory, and you should expect from your government to know better and to be able to understand what's good and what's bad. Because everyone votes in the referendum, but not everyone understands what they're voting for.
Well,
And that goes for both sides, right?
yeah, but that's not an excuse either. It's everyone's responsibility to actually be aware of what they're voting for and to actually show up and vote for it. It was the same thing that happened across the world in 2016. People just expected results and nobody turned out to vote. So completely different thing happened and everyone's like, oh shit, how did this happen? Well, A, you didn't go vote. B, you didn't give a shit until the result was already final. And C, now you actually have to go through with the result and see what you can do.
Oh no, you're absolutely right, and this is also why we see an increase now. So there are a lot of polls out there, and they are saying that if there was a second referendum, which is a possibility, as we're going to be talking about in a little bit, because that's one of the options for the future. They say that the actual percentage of people who are going to go vote is going to be way higher than what was before, and they say that the result is also going to be quite different. Because a lot of people, when they went out to vote for the referendum, they were voting not against the EU, but against the establishment and against what's going on locally instead of globally, and not in a relation, with any relation, nothing to do with the European Union.
Well, if we go back to the map for a bit, it's a bit surprising because essentially Northern Ireland and Scotland, to a large extent, are still mono-nationality states, while the rest of the England and Wales does have a mix of population which is not in peace with itself. Like London is a Remainer part of the city.
60% remain in London, and this is mainly because someone can say that because most of the big businesses, this is London City, so it's not just London, it's London City there, and so most of the big businesses are in London. And there's a big number of people, with highly educated people, because that's the nature of London. That's why there was like 60% remain. While outside London, and especially as you go further up, you can see that the percentages for leave increase.
Yeah.
So someone could say there is a correlation there.
Yeah, and it's not just that. Like even in, I mean, it's not much, but as a statement, as a Greek person, I do think that you are being treated negatively to a large extent, even as being the butt of a joke, because haha, Greeks, they don't pay taxes, they're not good payers, they're irresponsible, they don't want to work. So you see stereotypes being used against the people. So when this is outside a highly educated and well-paid area like the London City Centre, a lot of the people will go and vote with that in mind, because who is the Polish guy? It's your cleaner. It's the guy who collects like trash or just, I don't know, does deliveries. It's not the Polish guy in a university with a lab coat. And that doesn't mean that the Polish guy who's a cleaner matters anything less. But the average British person can't look at it and say, why the fuck is this guy here? Doesn't he have a country?
Well, that's because there is an increase in nationalism, a very bad increase in nationalism towards the whole planet, not just the UK. Because if you think about it, that's how we ended up with Trump. That's how we ended up with a far-right president in Brazil as well. That's how we end up with Golden Dawn in Greece. So there's a rise, although in all those far-right like ideologies all around the globe.
Well, I'm going to ask a Greek question. Is nationalism actually bad?
Well, the answer is yes, because history has said so. And we don't want to see history being repeated. And actually, one of the next episodes we're going to be talking... Because if you ask me, I think all this is related to Russia. And in one of the next episodes, we're actually going to have a guest from Russia here. And she actually survived. She was there. She lived during the break of the USSR. So she has lived that kind of situation, and she does have stories to share. And I think it's going to be a very interesting discussion.
Well, yeah, I don't necessarily agree that nationalism is essentially, ultimately bad, depending on how you use it. For instance, right now, Europe doesn't have an identity, like the United Kingdom is lacking an identity. So it's kind of expected that you need to go into an extreme to actually find your identity and place in the world. For instance, I would say European nationalism as a whole, with a fervent love for Europe, is not something destructive. What the UK is doing right now with a very tiny scope nationalistic shit show is the real problem.
It's all about excluding yourself and excluding your country and your nation from everyone and everything. Mm-hmm. Believing that if you're alone, like absolutely alone, you can do better than if you were in a union. That's the problem.
Yeah, but if you are nationalistic about the union, like American nationalism is, that brings forth a way stronger identity that sometimes it is required. The US didn't necessarily just grow into what it was because of love. It was because of hatred and civil wars and out of necessity at the end.
That's a big question, and that we should cover that in a different episode, because what the US is now is not something we should want to follow. But let's bring it back. Let's bring it back to Brexit, because we're talking about how the whole timeline is going to work. So I have here another very interesting infographic that shows us exactly how things happened. So you can see that after the referendum, actually, let me get you back to here. So we had the referendum. Then the UK had enough time. So in order to leave the European Union, you need to trigger Article 50. If you don't trigger Article 50, nobody officially knows that you want to leave. And because we said that the referendum had an advisory nature, they didn't really have to do it until they felt ready to do it. So with the referendum happening on the 23rd of June 2016, then it took the government almost a year to actually trigger Article 50. So they had like a year to go and create plans. This is what we're going to propose the EU. This is how we're going to deal with everything. That's how we're going to run the country after Brexit and all this kind of stuff. So that brought us to March 29th, 2017, which is the day that Theresa May sent Article 50 and triggered the whole Brexit situation. So what Article 50 did, it basically means that there were going to be 2 years of negotiations between the country, between the UK and the European Union, and they would decide like how this split is going to happen. So that brings us here. So after Article 50 was triggered, there have been so many events happening that it's almost like a daily thing. So every single day, something new is going to happen. Something is going to change, down to the point that right now, literally no one can tell you, yep, this is what's going to happen. You even have like professional political analysts out there saying, yep, then we don't know. We don't know. Everything can happen, pretty much. So you can see here in that infographic that after the Article 50 was triggered, there are so many things that have happened since that day. Now, officially, since the Article 50 was triggered on the 30th of March 2017, the official date of the split would be the 29th of March 2019, which is in about 2 weeks from now, isn't it?
Yep.
And, surprise, surprise, nobody knows what's going to happen.
I know.
Well, yeah, what is it then?
Total fucking chaos.
Yeah, pretty much. So here is another infographic about this. So, after the UK votes to leave, do you see that little arrow which says this is where all the important decisions are made? And you'll notice that this is the time before triggering Article 50. So now guess what the British government did within that time frame. Just guess.
Fucking nothing.
Exactly. So we had absolutely no plan of what's coming next. Nobody knew what's going to happen or why it's going to happen or anything. And the general belief was that, you know what, we're going to go down to Brussels, we're going to ask for whatever we want, and they're going to give it to us because reasons.
Well, because most of the people, I assume, that voted didn't get the message that the British Empire is now just a shit little island nation rather than the empire that the sun never sets upon.
Well, that whole approach is the exact same approach that Greece had. Because if you remember, I think a year before the whole Brexit situation came up, we had Grexit.
Yep. To note, Greece was always there first.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, Greece has done it. Greece has done it.
Yep.
Greece has done it.
Every single thing in history, Greece was always there first.
Well, yeah, in a way, yeah, that's true, because that's when we had Varoufakis, Yannis Varoufakis, our famous
bookseller.
Yeah. Now he's a bookseller, so he was he was the Minister of Finance, and now he's selling books with his autobiography because he's famous now. We made him famous. So his negotiation tactics were: I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna be the bad boy, I'm gonna piss on them, and then ask for money, and they're gonna give it to me because otherwise I'm gonna leave the European Union and it's gonna be a collapse.
Yes, exactly that.
How did that turn out for us?
Well, Brussels told us, you can go fuck yourselves. By the way, you have some money to pay to us. And we said, okay, we'll pay.
Which is exactly what happened after the first round of negotiations with the UK as well.
Yeah.
Because Theresa May, so the UK, the British people, they voted leave, and then that's when the first round of negotiations, after a year, after they triggered Article 50, they had a year to prepare, and then they went to Brussels to actually start negotiating everything. Mm-hmm. And then the UK said, well, we're leaving, so screw you. And Brussels said, well, that's not going to happen because you owe us money, and if you don't pay us that money, we're going to screw you.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Well, let's not forget the best political action that the UK had to offer during that time is to hold another general election.
Which we did.
Yeah, we did as well, but this is so dumb and nobody's looking at anything anyone else is doing. It's amazing.
Let me actually try and find, because there is a video out there of very funny video, because there were 3 general elections within a year, and people were getting quite fed up with the whole thing. Let's see if I can find the video.
Well,
it's a very
Speaking of elections, I'm really happy we don't actually get to vote on any of this.
Okay, so here's the video. Let me play the video for you guys because I think it's quite interesting.
You're joking. Not another one? Oh, for God's sake, I can't stand this. There's too much politics going on at the moment. Why does she need to do it?
Are you excited about another election?
No, no, not another one. It's too much. It's too much, isn't it?
It's great news.
Good?
Well, yeah, because it means that we can get her out.
Let's see what the people want.
Yes, he didn't get out.
So,
Do you feel ready for a general election?
yeah, we need one.
Are you excited by the prospect of being able to vote again?
Not necessarily. Yes, of course, obviously, every chance to get the vote, you will vote, but I think they're just taking advantage of a bad situation at the moment. So, all in all, it's not good for the country.
I think the first lady was the best
You're
one.
joking. Not another one? Oh, for
I love
God's
her
sake,
reaction.
I can't, honestly, I can't stand this. There's too much politics going on at the moment. Why does she need to do it?
Are you excited about?
Which I think.
Why does he need to do it, Jason?
Well, I think her reaction, so the first lady's reaction, perfectly describes how the average British person thinks. Because if we compare the British population with the Greek population in the UK, everything, well, almost everything,
6 times over. Yeah.
definitely compared to Greece, runs smoothly, like very smoothly. Especially, remember, comparing it to Greece.
I thought you were just comparing the populations. So I said,
No, not just the population,
Okay.
like everything, like from public transport to public services, like everything runs extremely smoothly, unlike Greece. And as a result, most people are so desensitized towards politics that they don't care. Like it doesn't matter who's in the government because, you know what, it works. So why should we care?
yeah, if anything, people in the unions just feel like hustlers.
Exactly. So that's why I think that lady's reaction was like another one again. Like, come on.
Fuck yeah.
So see, I think that's
Vote for me, please.
Yeah. That's why I think it's important to understand like how a lot of people are now being fed up with the whole situation. And also another very interesting thing that I would like to discuss with you is the fact that during the whole referendum situation and when everything was happening, Labour, which is the number 2 party in the UK, was extremely passive.
Yep.
They didn't really say anything. They didn't take sides. There were a lot of their members of parliament siding with Remain, but quite a lot of them with Leave as well. So it was a cross-party situation. So it wasn't like, oh yeah, this party, like the government supports Remain and the opposition supports Leave. It wasn't like a clean situation like that.
Yeah, well, this is a part of wider discussion on why democracies have failed. Because just because you're part of a party, you're kind of expected to follow some politics and not have your own opinions.
Otherwise, you're removed from the party, and that's
Yeah.
it. Your career is done. And it's not just your career; it's basically your job.
Yeah, but is that really democracy?
Well, that's a very big and interesting discussion because with like any type of politics, not just democracy, like communism or anarchy.
Yeah.
In the very core, in the theoretical core of those ideals, they work and they are perfect.
Except communism.
Even communism,
No.
even communism, in theory, if it was perfectly applied, it would work. But in reality, in real life, none of those work.
Yeah.
If you speak with communists and you tell them, oh, you know what, USSR was like the first fully communist country, and you see how that ended up, they go to excuses. Well, it wasn't proper communism. It wasn't really applied correctly. So that's how they treat it. And it's this. I think it's the same with democracy. Just because we name it democracy doesn't mean that everyone has a say. Because think about it now. You could say that even with a referendum, like if it was real democracy, everyone would have to vote. It would have to be mandatory, and they would need to have a result over the 100% of the population. Because now it was 78, I think it was. Let's look back at the map. So so it was 72%. So 70. What? How do you know?
Yep.
Extreme situation, I know. But how do you know that the remaining 28%, 27.8% were full Remainers?
Well, you don't. And this is
Or again, how do you know they were not Brexiters, right?
Well, the main difference I feel that democracy has went through over the years, because sure they say, oh, you're Greeks, democracy, fuck yeah, and whatnot. One thing we forget is you had to earn your right to vote. Not everyone was eligible to vote. You have to meet some standards and be a good standing citizen to be able to vote.
That's a very big discussion.
I know, which right now won't apply to any country in the world. And not just that, we're forgetting that even democracy had tyrants.
The question here is how do you define who gets to vote and who doesn't?
It depends on the country.
Even leave countries outside. So let's take the UK as an example, right?
Yeah.
How would you choose who gets to vote and who doesn't? What's your criteria?
Well, in Athens, if I remember correctly, you had to be a citizen of age, not be a slave, which can be translated.
This already is pretty similar to what happens here. You need to be over 18.
You need to be over 18.
Yeah.
It's just the not be a slave part that needs to be redefined. Not be a traitor.
How do you define the traitor? Because for Brexiters, everyone that remain is a traitor, and for Remainers, anyone who voted to leave is a traitor.
Yeah, but
so how do you define the traitor?
Well, technically, if you went away and fought for ISIS, you're a traitor, so you don't get to vote.
Okay, that's fine.
That's so.
No.
You have some standards like that.
Okay, so that's the thing.
Yeah,
that's fine. That's the extreme. Where do you draw the line, though?
Well, that's up to the government, really, because there's no written code of laws over here. It doesn't matter.
So that's the thing. When you say, well, some people shouldn't vote, because that's very common.
Yeah.
Especially now with the whole situation, one of the very common things that both sides quote quite a lot, both Remainers and Brexiters, is, well, that person, he's stupid, so he shouldn't be allowed to vote. Or whenever someone either, that's the thing. No matter the side you're on, quite a lot of the times people out there say that, well, they're on the opposite side of me, and they don't agree with me, so, you know what? They're too stupid to understand, so they shouldn't vote. And the question there is, where do you draw the line? How do you define who is too stupid to vote?
Well, I never spoke about intelligence as a mark of who
It was just an example. That was just an example.
I don't know. I don't think intelligence-based exclusion is anything good, because you can go anyone with a university degree, anyone who scores an IQ over whatever. It doesn't matter. It's all arbitrary.
Well, let's bring this back, because we've made like a big circle around it, like a very interesting discussion, I think. But let's bring it back into Brexit, because that's what what we began discussing today, isn't it? So where were we? I think we were talking about how the whole process is, and like how the European countries, going to have to agree. Let me show you this. Let me get back to this one over here. So in order for Brexit to move forward, well, as we said, who votes, why they voted, that's a big discussion that we try to go through. So in order for Brexit to move forward, both the UK government and the European Parliament are going to have to agree on what the terms of the exit are going to be. In order to do that, the EU needs to vote on them as well, because there's a lot of parliamentary votes here in the UK, and none of them is passing because May is useless. But so once both chief negotiators from the EU side and the UK side say, yep, this is something we can work with, then it's going to be time for the European Parliament to vote for it. And in order for it to pass, they're going to need to have either at least 20 countries are going to need to agree with it, and those 20 countries are going to need to have like 65% of the population of the European Union in order for it to pass. If only 15 countries, let's say, agree with it, then it doesn't pass. That means we're going to have to start negotiating again. Or if 21 countries with less than 65% of the population, meaning like Greece or other like smaller countries, agree, but big countries like Germany, for example, or France, they say, nope, we don't like that deal. That means, again, we're back into the negotiation stage. So it's not just what the UK government wants, it's also what the EU Parliament also wants.
All I'm getting from this is that there's no equality between the votes, so it feels like some countries are being a bit, I don't know, excluded?
Not excluded, but yeah, you are right when saying that there is no equality with the votes, which is understandable because the population of Germany and the population of France and Spain and Italy, they are far bigger than let's say the population of Poland, or the population.
Well, Poland's quite large, but
Yeah, the population of
Greece.
Greece or the
Yeah.
population of Cyprus, which is also a European country.
well,
So you can,
yeah.
for example, say that the vote of Cyprus is equally powerful. It matters, don't get me wrong, it still matters, but it's not equally powerful as is the vote for France, for example.
That sounds kind of reasonable and based on its country's power or ability or stability.
Not just the power, it comes down to population, because France, what's the population of France? I don't know, it's quite big, isn't it? Let me check that.
6 billion.
Yeah, billion. So
6
France,
billion French souls.
So France population, there are 67 million
Mhm.
people, 67 million people, and let's say, well, let's compare that with the,
Romania.
yeah, okay, let's see Romania.
Fuck yeah. Is Romania even an EU country?
I think they are 20 million.
Fuck yeah.
So
A third.
let's compare that to Greece, like France with
Yeah.
Greece, like 70 million compared to 10 million. Shouldn't their vote matter more than ours?
But we're Greece.
Yeah, more. Yeah, that's a big discussion there.
Yes.
Okay, so that's when the no-deal Brexit comes into play.
Mhm.
Because if the negotiations fail, if then the votes either side of the table fail, like either in the UK Parliament they don't vote for it, or if in the EU Parliament they don't vote for it, what that means, it's a no-deal Brexit. And what a no-deal Brexit means is that the UK instantly stops being a member of the European Union. Every single European Union law ceases to affect the UK.
Mhm.
And that's it. We don't have access to the single market. We don't have access to anything. And the single market is a very big topic of discussion as well, because what they want to exit the single market. And what the single market is, it means we as a country, the UK can trade products with any other country within the European Union without paying any tax or any having any roadblocks. And at the same time, it would mean that whenever, let's say Japan, which is something that's actually happening, when they want to make a trade deal, they only need to make a trade deal with the European Union, and that covers all the countries within the European Union. So, and that means it's a bigger economy because it's a European economy, and that it makes it for an easier trade deal. So now that Japan is actually signed, I think, a trade deal with the European Union, that means Greece can take advantage of it. It means Italy can take advantage of it. It can mean that every country in the European Union can take advantage of it. Well, except the UK, because they're not going to be part of the European Union anymore. And that would mean they're going to have to make a brand new trade deal with everyone.
Yep. I think I have the solution to it.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Throw them out of NATO and invade.
Okay.
Operation Sea Lion 2.0.
So in preparation of this no deal Brexit, a lot of the countries have started giving out guidance to their citizens, like what to expect. One of those countries is also Greece. So there are a lot of UK citizens living in Greece because it's one of the best tourist destinations in the European Union, and that's
for pensioners, I guess, too.
Yeah, and
Hot weather.
Exactly, hot
cheap.
weather, hot women, perfect.
Hot man.
Well, yeah,
Well, I'm pretty hot. I'm in the 10%.
Actually, I think so. I was having a discussion recently with a friend of mine here in the UK, and we were discussing how there are some stereotypes.
Yes.
For British people and for Greek people. So the stereotypes the British people have for Greeks is that Greeks are gay and that Greeks invented gay sex.
Yes.
And then at the same time, one of the stereotypes us Greeks have for the British is that they are gay.
Yeah, the gay island.
Exactly. So that developed to a very interesting conversation. So most British people that go to Greece as pensioners, according to him, British guy, right?
Yeah.
Were all the old racist guys that didn't like Britain because it was too brown for them.
Yeah.
So they would leave after they became pensioners to go and live in Greece. which is hot weather and
we're all brown.
doesn't matter.
Okay.
So from
Is
the
Greece
UK,
white?
from the UK, a lot of, according to him,
Yeah.
racist guys, all racist white males, leaving the UK, going to Greece to leave their pension. And if you think about it, right? So stick with me here. Those people are the traditional British guy that we see in Greece. So we have to build our stereotypes on people that we know, right?
Yeah.
And if our stereotype is that British people are gay, doesn't that mean that all those racist guys come to Greece in order to live out their secret gay lives?
Might as well be. I'm gathering something different from all of this, is that the UK is just the Greece of the North, and vice versa.
Well, I'd hope. So
Both of us have an island, Jason.
Yeah. So getting back to how Greece is dealing with this whole thing. So they brought out this very interesting website, brexit.gov.gr, and they give tips and guidance to any UK citizen that it's currently living in in Greece. So they have like what happens if there is a withdrawal agreement, and what happens if it doesn't. Like they have questions and answers, like what are the criteria for acquiring a resident permit, and they tell you. I have to say I'm very impressed that the Greek government actually did that, because we're not used into that kind of shit.
Well, the only thing they don't include in all of this is what to do if you want for a permit. Wait 6 years in the bureaucracy offices.
Actually, they did. In Greek, yeah, so this is going to be in Greek, so look at that. So actually, they have that. So they have questions, so they have all that information. They have it.
Oh.
And they even have questions like, what should I do? I was really surprised, like, what is Article 50, so and everything. I was extremely surprised when they did that, because the Greek government doesn't usually inform you.
Yeah, and the weird thing is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the United Kingdom has released fuck all.
Well, they have, but that's the thing, because nobody really knows what's happening. What the British government releases out there every time is what they want to happen.
Yeah.
What they want to see happening. So, for example, they were saying...
Well, grounded in reality, obviously.
Oh, well, apparently not. That's the thing. So they give out, this is what we want to happen. So, for example, we want to see free trade. Free trade. But we're gonna guarantee the rights of all the European citizens in the UK. But you're gonna have to pay 65 quid to do it.
Yep, I paid it.
Then the European Union came and said, well, you can't do that. You can't charge our citizens for something that you caused. So you can't do that. So this is part of the negotiation as well, and they haven't agreed. So the British government, they are sticking to their guns that they're going to have it done.
Mm-hmm.
The EU says if you do it, you're not getting a deal. So it's nobody really knows, because the British government tells us what they want to do, but they don't tell us if the European Union has agreed to it, and if it's actually going to be happening. So it's a very weird situation. So I wanna talk again. Let me show you this, because I think it's very interesting. So this here is what's going to happen to us because they want to withdraw from the single market. So when they withdraw from the single market, they're going to need to get trade deals with other countries. One of them, and the biggest one of them, being the US.
God bless freedom.
So what the US? So they were having talks about how they're gonna deal with this, and what the US said is, well, if you wanna get a trade deal with us, what you're gonna do? What you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to take in all of our farmers' products, chickens, livestock, that kind of stuff, which has been banned from the EU.
Yep, fucking chlorine chickens.
Exactly. So they're actually going to start importing. So if they go ahead with this trade deal, because the US has a trade deal with the EU, that excludes chlorinated chicken.
Yep.
But they told the UK, if you want to trade with us, you're going to have to take everything that the EU has discarded.
Well, it's not just that. Trump the other day did say that the UK should drop its health and safety standards.
Yeah, exactly. So they're saying that, you know what? We know those products are shit.
Yeah.
We know that the EU doesn't want them because they are dangerous for your health. But...
Allegedly.
Well,
Allegedly.
I have a link for that, so I'll show you. So if you want to secure a trade deal with us, you're going to have to take them.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to eat them.
You have to eat the chicken, Jason.
Well, and now, so here's what I told you. So there are fears. There is an actual research done. What's the effect going to be? Using the actual food poisoning data from the US, like using percentage of population and everything, they calculated that if the US gets this trade deal with the UK, what's going to happen is we're going to see an increase in food poisoning and food-related deaths, and it's going to increase the costs of the NHS at least £1 billion a year.
Sounds good to me.
So if we sign this trade deal, we're literally going to start dying.
Yeah.
And now let me tell you a little bit more about this trade deal, because chlorinated chicken is not the end of it. So first, we'll have to take the chlorinated chicken, right? The genetically modified wheat, because that's also part of it, and cloned meat and beef, right? Because the US believes that, you know what, cloned animals are good for the herd. So we're going to actually start eating clones, and nobody's going to stop them, right? But you're going to say, well, at least I'll be able to buy like British products, right? Nobody's forcing me to buy all this imported American chicken, right? Well, that's a no. Do you know why? Because the US objects to COOL. What COOL is, COOL, is the country of origin labeling. So the US says, if you want a trade deal with us, you're going to have to remove any mentions of country of origin. So we'd be going down to Tesco's and we wouldn't know if this is a British chicken or an American chicken, if it's been chlorinated or not. So we won't even have a choice in this thing. And they're forcing this down our throats. And, right, it doesn't end there. So that not only includes like where the actual animal was grown and farmed, it mentions the country of birth, the country of fattening, the slaughtering of animals, country of milking, packaging. So we could actually be getting a chlorinated chicken that was flown to China to be slaughtered and milked and I don't know what else, and then it was flown to Germany to be packaged, and then it was flown to wherever, to Venezuela to be labeled, and then it was flown to the UK to be sold to us suckers. So that could actually be happening, and we're going to have zero ways of preventing that.
Well, we have one.
Well, what is that?
Not leave the EU.
Or...
Okay,
or...
Or 49% the price.
14, yeah. I'll tell you what. Let me go through the trade deal. Okay, so let me go through that trade deal, and I'll tell you.
I fucking love the trade deal, by the way.
So yeah. So post-Brexit, chances are that we'll be shopping blind, unable to avoid genetically modified American cheddar, and even if we wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were like, no, I'm not going to support this chlorinated meat, I'm going to only be buying British chicken.
From my local butchers.
Yeah, that's not going to happen, because even
Obviously.
your local butcher is going to have to... He's going to be forced into selling this chicken.
Not even forced. He's not a retard. He wants to make money.
Well, yeah, and it's going to be cheaper as well. And, by the way, in the same vein, the Americans would also demand that we abolish the geographic protections that we'd like to preserve, including with the EU. So what that means, champagne is not going to be a French product anymore. And
nobody gives a shit. It's about feta.
Feta, yeah. So we're
Yeah.
gonna be importing feta in the UK, and it's gonna be American feta.
We have to defend feta.
And then we're gonna be having Californian sapane. We're gonna have Minnesotan pork pies or Connecticut Cornish pasty. And it doesn't end there. That's what we import, right? But this deal will also allow the Americans to start distilling whiskey,
Okay.
because this is a protected British product, and the Americans have bourbon.
Yeah.
So they don't have whiskey. Whiskey is only made and exported from the UK.
Yep.
If we sign this deal, they're gonna be able to start distilling whiskey.
They have good distilleries.
Well, I'm not saying that,
Yeah,
but
that's good.
they're gonna be able to start distilling whiskey without any of the boring traditional rules about aging, which is what the UK is protecting right now.
Yep.
So we're gonna lose everything to them.
Well, not everything.
Well,
We lost the colonies.
Well, yeah. So that's the thing. So remember when I mentioned like cloned animals? Well, the United States believe that the use of cloning technologies are beneficial for herd improvements, and that no differences have been demonstrated in terms of food safety between food products produced from cloned animals or their offspring and those produced from conventionally bred animals. That was in the 2018 US National Trade Estimate. So what that means is, because previously they had nowhere to send all those cloned chickens and the cloned beef and the chlorinated food, only like China and that kind of thing. This is now gonna flood the UK. And also, surprisingly, this is where the backstop comes into play. Because, so the backstop is gonna be, I know we've jumped through it a little bit, but so backstop is the situation where if there is going to be a physical border between Ireland and the UK. If there is no backstop, what that means is the EU will have no way of defending those trade situations, because the UK could be importing all those chlorinated chickens and then pass them through to Ireland, and then from Ireland to be exported in the whole EU. Because the moment that chlorinated chicken is in Irish land and Irish soil, that's it. They're inside the EU, and they can start exporting it throughout the EU, bypassing the trade restrictions they have with the US. So that's why the EU is so precious over its backstop.
So is there data actually supporting that none of the cloned or blitzed animals are used in the US?
No, they are.
Okay.
They are. That's the thing. They are.
So why not use them?
That's because
look.
That's the thing.
Chlorinated chicken. I agree. I just don't know how cloned or genetically enhanced plant life is actually destructive.
Exactly. So this is what this research answered. So they use all this progress in the US, right? And so the US report higher rates of illness from foodborne illnesses than in the UK annually. So 14.7% of the US population is going to suffer within a year by food poisoning at some point, right? 14.7% or 15% of the population at some point within the year is going to get some kind of food poisoning.
That's good.
Versus only 1.5% in the UK. And the reason why this is happening is because we have the EU regulations protecting us. So the difference between the EU food regulations and the US food regulations are that the Americans believe if you chlorinate the chicken, it's safe to eat, while the EU says that in order for the chicken to be safe to eat, it needs to be bred and it needs to be in humane situations, the whole farm needs to be cleaner, and not just do whatever shit you want, just kill them, stamp on them, and then just spray them with chlorine and nothing matters.
Yeah.
So that's the big difference.
All I'm gathering is that the American people are more well equipped to eat shittier food than we are.
Well, they are more immune than what we are, if that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, we should be more immune to that too.
Yeah.
Jason, we have to eat that chlorinated chicken.
Yeah, and then get food
No,
poisoning.
we have to eat the chlorinated chicken, Jason.
Yeah. Well, this is part of what's next in what to expect in the future. And now, so next week on Tuesday, I think it is 12th? Yeah. So on Tuesday the 12th, we're going to have another very important vote. Theresa May is bringing in yet another offering to the members of parliament to approve her deal of how she sees Brexit happening. If that gets turned down again, which most people think it will,
Yep.
well, that's it. We're heading to no deal.
Well, no, because Theresa May said, if you don't vote for this, we're more likely to remain in the EU.
Yeah, she said that though because she wanted to scare those. That's the thing. So her deal is so bad, Remainers hate it.
Yep.
Brexiters hate it.
Obviously.
So it's too soft for Brexiters and too hard for Remainers.
Yeah.
So literally nobody wants it.
Maybe nobody wants Brexit.
So that's the thing. The Brexiteers, they want
Yeah.
like a harder Brexit. So that's why she said that. Because the Brexiteers currently, as they claim, the MPs that claim to be Brexiteers, they are more than the ones that openly say, yeah, I'm a Remainer. And she said that in order to scare those people, those MPs, into voting for her deal to get it done. And that's why she waited so long. So we're literally 2 weeks before the official exit from the
Yep.
EU. That was part of her tactic, to run the clock down and force people to get her deal.
Sounds surprisingly British.
Well, yeah, that's because it is. Let me find a video.
If only there were other British politicians we can look back to that waited for the last possible moment to act.
Okay, so I have a very, very interesting video. So you all of you know Gollum, don't you? Okay, so let me show you a very interesting video. Here, let's see the video and let's talk about, so you can understand what's going on in Theresa May's head.
Prime Minister, you wanted a copy of your withdrawal agreement.
Our agreement. This is it. Our deal. Yes. We takes back control. Money. Borders. Laws. Blue passports. No. It hurts the people. It makes them poorer. But I finds it and negotiates it. We want it. We has to do it. Okay. We asks the people if they want it, and then no! Stupid, tricksy Remainers. They ruins it. But if the people want something else, then false. This is the only deal. Juicy and sweet. We want it. We need it. We will have it. But they told us, precious. They hates the deal. All of them hates it. They want a people's vote. People's vote? Ah! They steal it from us. Curse them, we hate them. But the peoples are our friends. You don't have any friends. This is the deal. It's mine. My own. My Brexit.
So yeah, what the what the people's vote is a second referendum, pretty much, on the Brexit deal and Remain. Now, even the Labour actually went out and said that, you know what, if there is no deal after Tuesday, we're openly supporting a second referendum, which is a very big thing, because up until now they had never supported something like that.
Yeah, because they're playing a politics game too, which is the stupid thing. Nobody actually looks what's best for the country. It's still who's going to do one over the other.
Well, it's still quite interesting to see what the outcome is going to be, because even if the deal gets signed in the European Parliament, in the UK Parliament on Tuesday, it will still need to go through the European Parliament to be agreed. And while most of the countries openly say, yeah, this is a good deal and this is a deal we would be able to support, well, when the time comes, we don't know. They might say, well, nope, that's still an option. And then there is the question if they're going to extend Brexit or not, which is also an option, because they said, well, we need to extend it because we haven't had enough time to come to an agreement and get a proper deal to avoid no-deal Brexit. But at the same time, we have European elections in a few months, so they say that the only extension they're going to have is going to be for a few months. And are they going to be able to achieve what they didn't achieve in 2 years? Are they going to be able to achieve it in 2 months, 3 months?
No.
That's the thing. So nobody knows what's happening, and I don't even think Theresa May knows what's happening.
Well, maybe it's time for a proper change of government.
That's the thing. That could be an option, but there is not enough time to have another proper election.
Oh no, I'm not saying proper election. Just kick the fucker out.
That's not how it happens. That's the thing.
I know it's not how it happens, but when you reach a point where the prime minister of a country is now just
they actually try to do it. They called for a no confidence vote.
Yeah, but nobody has the balls to actually take that position anyway.
Well, yeah. Well, if you think about it, the day after Brexit, when Cameron resigned, before we had the second general election, they were wondering, like, who are we going to have up there? Is it going to be Boris Johnson? Boris Johnson said no, because he knew what a career suicide that would be. So the next in line was Theresa May, and she got it because nobody else wanted the position.
Yeah, so that's the problem. Most of the government right now has shown any inability to take control over any situation. So it's really, 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 really ironic that it's a campaign about taking back control and no politician actually wants to take control.
Well, taking back control, but as we saw with the trade deal with the US, we're actually losing control on our products, on our imports, on our everything.
Yeah, but even trade deals aside, nobody actually wants to take control.
But at least we don't have to pay the European Union.
I'm going to put it this way, I'm not a politician, and I'm not even from this fucking country, but I'll fucking own up to this. I do a better job than Theresa May has done.
Well, I think that literally everyone would agree with you on that one, because both sides hate her.
Yeah, like, honestly, I don't give a shit. Just have someone there that just wants to do something rather than this perpetual fucking machine of shittiness.
Well, yeah, it's a shit show. It's a shit show, and nobody knows what's going to be happening over the next few weeks. So all we can do is hope that everything is gonna go right. If the deal gets signed, at least there is a light at the end of the tunnel that we know what's gonna be happening. Is that gonna be a positive outcome? If you ask me, no. But at least we know what the outcome is. Well, no, we have no idea what the outcome might be.
So I'm going to ask a Greek question again.
Okay.
One from the first episode. Could Hitler stop Brexit?
Well, he did a jerk-sit over to the whole European continent.
Hitler could have stopped Brexit twice. One if Operation Sea Lion was successful and the UK was no more, and one if he was actually the head of state currently rather than Theresa May.
Well, there's a very interesting series that you can watch that almost covers that. It's called Man in a High Castle.
Mm-hmm.
It's an alternative history series on Amazon Prime that covers what how would the US look like if Hitler had won Second World War and actually conquered the US? It's very interesting. You should all go and watch it. So with that, we are pretty much coming to an end.
Yep.
Because so remember that you can always. Where is it? Oh, my animations are not working. Anyway, so make sure to subscribe and follow us on Facebook because you can find us there.
And enable that pesky ad block.
Why enable? Oh, for me?
No. The people should enable that ad block. I don't want Google to get any money out of this.
Okay, so anyway, thank you guys for hearing us out. That was the second episode. On the next episode, it's gonna be likely the next week or the week after, and then we are likely gonna be talking about Russia and how Russia is affecting everything. So see you then.
Bye bye.